Well, hello there, Dr. Todd.
Good morning.
How's it going?
It's going great.
Good, good. I see we have a few other mystery people. Yeah. How's Stacy doing? It's a secret. She ain't telling us. None of your darn business. Oh gosh. Jessica's in the house. Beth's in the house. Well, we're going to get started. Today, we're going to be talking about priorities. And this is an interactive operation here. And we thought every once in a while, we usually have guests, but for those of you who it's your first time joining us, we usually have guests, but it's an interactive program. So we like to make some space that's, let's say, less competitive with guests. So if you have some addition or something you can add to this conversation, this is let's say a better opportune time, more opportunities today to do that, because I think we're talking about something today that is something that we deal with every day, and that is priorities. How do we make the priorities? Now, there are different ways to look at priorities. Sometimes it's that global 50,000-foot view, like what's my mission statement in life, and how am I trying to carry that out? What do I need to do today? But sometimes it's value things too. Often it's value things, like what do I value over other things? Now, this really becomes rather important when you have conflicts, which we often do, between things we want. We want a number of things, and as the saying goes, you can have anything, but you can't have everything. And so you have to put it in order of priorities. And to give an example, there's often a encouragement, let's say, for people to put in a box something, and in a safe box, hopefully, or ideally, that if your house were to catch on fire and you had to rush, you had time to grab one thing, what would that thing be? What are the things that are important in there? Some people they say, okay, I'm going to put a flash drive with all my grandkids' pictures on it, or I would grab my iPhone because, that's got to have my whole life is in that, Some people would say, grab my checkbook, that's and let that be the thing. Some would say I'm going to grab my Bible, and because that's the thing I know I'll need after my house burns down. So there are all kinds of things that people will choose, or there's lots of different ways that we can determine what's important to us. We might prioritize relationships, right? We only have so many hours in a day, and we only have enough headspace to deal with so many people. This is the old, we have talked about Dunbar's number on this program before, which is the number of people that we can have a relationship with. And it's not 7.5 billion, I can tell you that. That's not going to happen. So somebody is not going to get taken care of. You're going to spend less time with someone than you spend with another one. Sometimes some people need more time and they need more attention than other people. Some people you can sit down for 15 minutes and you have like an intense, or maybe not so intense, but meaningful interaction for those 15 minutes. And for some people, after 15 minutes, you're still trying to figure out, well, what is it that this meeting is about, or why are we here, so all of those things go into the mix. So I want to start off by asking you kind of a 50,000-foot view question of how do you go about making priorities? Now, that's a big, wide question. So you can choose what kind of things you want to prioritize. It could be the file cabinet, it could be your relationships. It could be time, what do you give more time to? There's all kinds of things that daily we're prioritizing. So I'm just at this point trying to get some kind of idea as to how you go about creating various priorities. So I'll leave it open to anyone who has something to say on that. Anyone? Go ahead, Todd. You look like you were going to say something, but your mic was off.
Yeah, no, sorry about that. One thing, as an indicator for me, what I would prioritize without thinking about it is my habit. So if I have a habit, so like I get up in the morning and do my walking first thing in the morning. So it's, it's kind of a swallowing the frog thing, but it's also because it's the coolest time of the day here usually. So I'll take the dog out and we'll go out for like, an hour, 90 minutes or whatever. First thing, it's a habit, right? And then, there's certain things that you do. I take a shower. So I guess that's important, personal cleanliness to a level. So, those things that you do repeated, so without thinking about it, what do I do habitually? And that's kind of it. So when you talk about like a 50,000 foot view, it's like, so you can just expand that out into like a year. How do I set my year is like, okay, milestones for the family come in first, then how much vacation time do I have? That's work. And then you work it down from there. And what do I have left? Okay, I want, I should have at least a small vacation somewhere. And what do I, who can I meet up with, or what kind of events are going on? Just kind of but those are kind of, as you work it down, I think for most people, the idea of work, not as what they do or how they do it, is a habit that is kind of enforced by having to live. So I consider that and also a habit, like, okay, I will work this many days during the year as is required by my employer. So those things in a whole year, when you look at a whole year, so you have 50,000, that's kind of how it works for me. I start with milestones, then vacations, then I know, and work just fills everything else of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's things that I do during the day, though. Like I said, walking in the morning, writing in the morning, editing at night, personal stuff. That's other stuff that fits in. And then once a week, I have this call and I have another call, a few things like that. But those are the habits, to me, are kind of those are priorities of a level that are like, they're conscious, but they're barely conscious. You've already made those decisions because you're giving your time. So when you say time, that is a lot of how I see it.
So if I'm understanding you right, Todd, the habits sort of create the ground floor of the things that you've determined that these things have a priority, maybe in support of your other priorities. In other words,
or goals, or even just you probably have at some conscious point say, oh, that would be good to do, or I enjoy that, and so that kind of moves up in the hierarchy. Things that you do that you think, oh, that was great, but it doesn't impress upon you like you should repeat it or whatever. It probably floats away, but it might pop up once in a while. But then it's not really a priority. It's kind of maybe something I like to do once in a while versus I want to be on this regularly.
Sure. Anyone else?
Well, I was thinking as Todd was discussing his priorities. I think I have to categorize mine into priorities to live and exist, and then personal priorities, those extra. So if I'm meeting I'm able to survive and have shelter and food and security, then what are my priorities after that is how I kind of think about my different routines and things that I do day to day.
So if I'm understanding you, Jessica, you have kind of like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of thing. You say, okay, I'm doing these things because if I do those, I can get to those, you know. Okay.
Yep.
And interesting. Anyone else? Go ahead, Misty. You have to turn on your mic though. There you go.
Yep. Takes a couple clicks. I think the other challenge is sometimes, as much as we want to think each day is going to be this little box where we're going to be able to have our habits, that, like Todd was saying, the shower and the walk and the, you know, that kind of thing. I think that there's going to be times where sometimes work is going to take on a little bit more and family might get a little bit neglected, but then there might be times that family takes a little bit more and work might have to get put aside just a bit. And so I find for me, it's not necessarily, as much as I would like to think each day is going to be this perfect little checkbox, life just doesn't work that way. And, you know, the cat gets ran over, suddenly you're dealing with that. The call comes from the school, suddenly you're dealing with that. You know, these life things that happen, I think that's probably what causes the stress level sometimes in our world, is we want to say that this is going to be my day, but oftentimes things happen in life. And so that's our struggle with trying to look at what does a priority list look like. You try to follow that for the day, but life happens. And each week it's kind of a collective. At the end of the year, collectively, did I balance out my life a little bit? You know, is kind of how I have to look at it, just because I am a mom of 3, all spread out in ages, and you know, and the working at the library and the things that happen here and the deadlines, and just trying to figure out what that looks like. And I like Todd's too, what you had said about you know, how you kind of edit at night and you do. I think that's kind of how I thrive, is maybe I have to take a break during the day to go take care of some things, but then maybe at night when I'm sitting, that's when I can clear my head, or I get up early and I can do my reading and get what I need to do in the morning. And then before I come into work, I don't really have this set, here's my block of time, but it's kind of a personal thing, I think, for each of us too.
Yes, certainly. So, Misty, the thing that your comments raised for me is, how do you go about shuffling those things around? You know, like you mentioned before, you know, sometimes work takes priority, and then sometimes your family takes priority. And I would imagine if one thought about it, there are some other things that pop up that come up and down. Can you help us to understand what's the process of your coming up with a priority for those things?
I think it varies from time to time, depending on the season, you know.
Sure.
I think that's why we're all drawn to this topic. And certainly I would love to be on these calls every week, but sometimes I'm like, you know what, I'll have to catch the recording. And sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't, you know, kind of thing. And it's like, okay, I prioritize this priority meeting because I thought, you know, I think we're all thriving for that balance. Yeah. And I think Jessica raised a good point about the needs. You know, sometimes I might get a liquid lunch or might not get lunch at all. And that's not really being effective either, you know, because we do need to take care of ourselves. Or maybe you cut your few hours of sleep out of the picture, and that's not really effective either. So I don't have a complete answer. I think for me, it's a personality thing where I'm a little bit driven. I like everything to be good, and or the best it can possibly be. And so sometimes I think we have to look at what are our limits and
Mm.
what are we willing to say no to. Because I think something that's helped me is when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So if I'm saying yes to an extra meeting at work, I'm saying no to my family. And so it's kind of an ongoing process for me, honestly, that I have to listen to my family. And if they're saying, Mom, you're always at work, I try to listen and say, okay, you know what, tonight I need to take some time out and I need to do this with my kids because they grow too fast.
Yeah,
It's true. It's true what they say.
yeah.
You know, or gosh, I haven't had dinner date with my husband in a while. Maybe we ought to just take a night out and have a nice dinner and talk
Mm.
for a bit, you know, instead of a quick passing by kind of thing. So if I'm being authentic and genuine, I guess I'm just saying that I think we're always going to be trying to figure this one out, you know, and it's different for everybody based on seasons.
Mhm.
Does that answer kind of what you're looking for?
Yeah. Yes. I think that there's more under the hood. I don't know that it's easy to get to, you know, but I think that there is more under the hood in terms of how do we process thinking of our priorities. Now, we have been talking about kind of broad blocks, and you know, that's where we start.
Mhm.
In terms of like work versus family, things like that. Those are broad blocks, big chunks. But underneath that is values, you know. How do we decide that work is more important than family? And sometimes it you know, the connection between the two can be blurred because we feel like, well, that is my commitment to my family is I go to work, you know, it's like I go out hunting or something, you know, you get some resources, gathering resources for your family. So actually it's not that line becomes blurred because I am doing it for them, even though I'm not with them, but they need different things at different times, you know, they need food every day, you know, but they need to know that they're loved every day too. But you don't have to necessarily do some great thing every day, but you know, maybe it's more like the kiss on the forehead, you know, or something like that, you know, or just a reminder that you do love them or something, you know. I mean, they're all, but so I'm looking for from anybody, of course, you know, like how do you establish for yourself priorities and values, your value priorities? Does the question make sense?
I've been working on that for a very long time, Lawrence. Lots of been doing some introspective reading lately about you know, sense of self, and for me that's a lot of my external behaviors. I do like to be helpful and caring, and so I foster dogs is one thing that's a priority for me that I keep in my life. It's not necessary, I don't need to do it to live, but it's a priority for me because it contributes to my sense of who I am. But yeah, that's a big question, and I'm still working on it every day.
Sure.
I think our values change based on things that happen to us. You know, if you have a big situation that happens in your life, it shifts your whole priorities around. Suddenly what seems important isn't anymore. I had a situation in my life, gosh, it's been a while now, but went through some things in life, and the top-notch job and the life that I was living at that time really shifted my idea of what was really important, because I realized that wasn't necessarily the most important thing in life and everything that I'd put into that. So you kind of refocus and reshift. And I went through a stage where I stayed at home then and being a full-time mother was something that I had placed on a priority. Then there came a time when kid oldest goes off to college, and and then you kind of shift and you kind of go, okay, now maybe the youngest is older, I can go ahead and get back into the workplace. And I knew working in the library, if you focused and put priority on money, yes, that job that I had before that had a lot of monetary reward. Libraries, maybe not as much, but it needs a little bit more of who I am. I love the humanities. I love helping people, like Jessica said. Where can I serve? And some of that, I think, happens when we get a little closer to our midlife point in life, where we kind of go, yeah, the light bulb comes on. Everything that the people say is true. It's not all about the money. It's not all about the status. It's about helping and serving. And but then there comes that point where you got to pull that back a little bit too, because I can really go all out, and I could foster several dogs and join Jessica, and then so it's like, how do you find that line? And it's like, so I think there's just kind of this, again, it is an ongoing process, and I don't want to take over the conversation, but this speaks to my heart, this very conversation. I love hearing what other people have to say about it. And you have a great way of presenting and facilitating, Lawrence. The last time it was a completely different topic, and I was really inspired by how you present and facilitate conversations, just so you know. You give us good things to think about.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Stacy, you've had your mic off for a while. Were you waiting to say something? I didn't know if she was waiting to say something.
Doesn't look like she's connected to audio. So.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Maybe that's why it's showing like it's her mic is unmuted. Okay. If you want to say something, just unmute your mic, and then I will know, and then we can, certainly make room for you, because there's room. So just to say a little bit about, the complexity of prioritizing, there is this thing called cognitive dissonance, where you may feel one thing, but then your head says another thing. You may feel like, oh, I really love this person, but your head tells you they're not good for you. You may want to skip that one. You may love, let's say, for example, your child, and it may be difficult to show that love to that child, and so you have maybe a priority conflict. It's like, okay, the kid wants a candy, and to make them happy, I'm really okay with giving them the candy. However, I know that they already had 2 candies today, and that's probably not going to be good for them. And so, no, you can't have candy. Then you have to say, well, look, you can wow all you want to, but there's no candy. Or how do you deal with that? And so it's like prioritizing the things cognitively that's not a good thing, and the thing your emotions. And sometimes if we always do the Dr. Spock thing, that's often, I've learned the hard way, is not often the best way to deal with people, because humans are feeling beings that think, not thinking beings that feel. So if I'm learning, for example, to prioritize how people feel over what they think. And that is really hard for me. I mean, even though I can say it right here and make all the case for it, but in actual practice, it's a thing, because I can't keep track of emotional things, because they float around, and moving targets are hard for me. I don't have that much processing power. So I need something to be static. And even though, new information floats around too, and so I have to change my mind about even things I think about, but at least I can trace them. I can go back and say, I can go back to that book that I read. I can go back to something, even if it's on the internet, and there's a reasonable chance, at least in my lifetime, that it's still there, or something like it is still there to refresh my memory. I can write down stuff and I can keep track, but feelings, not so much. People's feelings change, my feelings change. So, but that said, I have grown to understand that I need to prioritize people's feelings more, because mostly that's what they operate on. So that kind of thing, put out there, I'm still back at the values part. How do you set up your values? Anybody? How do you prioritize them? Do you prioritize, let's say, the practical things like, well, you got to make sure you got to pay the rent or your mortgage or something? Or do you prioritize your moral obligations to yourself or to some higher being or your society or something like that? How do you determine which of those things you're going to give weight, the most weight to, or more weight to? Can't hear you, Todd.
That's such a hard question.
Yeah.
I mean, I like what people are saying about they go back and reevaluate it, right? I mean, that makes sense to me because it is pretty fluid in that sense. But like, where do you get a starting point? What do you put? So for me, I'm a pragmatist in that world of like, okay, I got to take care of needs. And in that world, I try to just inculcate like, this is a schedule that I will keep, and then work with what you're talking about, which is probably more important. Maybe not, but you're not allowed the space of time. So it becomes more of, how do I emphasize in a compressed space? How do I make something bigger than just time? You know what I mean? It's really and that's different for everyone, right? It's different for everyone, and it's different to everyone. And so when you're talking about how do you make that is a difficult thing. I try to go into a pragmatic mode and say, okay, well, I can look at how much time I'm spending doing this and this and this, and this tells me, my time spacing, but that doesn't give a value necessarily. It may give a value to my time, which is something, but it is not, it means, and it might mean something to some people, but in realistic, if I spent 5 great minutes with someone versus 5 hours of just, me
Enduring the other person.
Yeah, enduring. What a great term. Absolutely. That's where you have, I mean, it is a value judgment that it isn't just yours. It's theirs as well. So when you talk about that, I hadn't thought of this, but what you bring up is, a big part of what our values are also how much we value someone and what their values are. Because that's the part that you'll give up. If you value the person, you'll give up your personal things sometimes if you know that that's how you can connect. And it isn't just a matter of time. It might be a matter of effort. It might be a matter of money. It could be, I suppose. But realistically, it's something that or you believe, brings you closer together. And so, but that varies. It's really such a dynamic thing. You bring it up, it's like, yeah, that's way harder than, we let on. And we pretend like I've spent a lot of time with someone that's important, or I did this thing for someone. But in the end, it's kind of like if you sell a used car to someone. If they think they got a good deal, they got a good deal. If they don't feel they got a good deal, they didn't. And so we are so dependent in some ways for that value, and particularly with people, which is, I would hope it's high on my thing, that it's a lot of work. You have to get to know them. You have to communicate. and how that, and in a way that they're willing to communicate with you. Boy, that's a great, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. Well, I want to come back to that, but Diane put, she's prefers to write her comment in, so I'll try to read it. And I'm not very good at this. I'll mention many times I'm dyslexic, so if I
Lawrence,
misrepresent.
I just was gonna read the comments for you.
Oh,
if you want me to.
that's great, because I will misrepresent people.
So there's a couple. So Angie says she prioritizes by following inner peace. And then Diane said her priorities stem from care for others, managing issues that come up, awareness of herself, and all of this. Her mind is constantly processing awareness of self, space, and others. It's just how she is wired. She makes sure to sleep well. Yes, enduring is challenging these days. LOL. I want the SD Humanities wooden file cabinets. Oh, yes, everybody wants those. They're amazing.
Yes. Well, those are some really good comments, and I appreciate people. However you want to interact, we're good. I want to offer, because of the complexity and the difficulty of that question, I want to maybe just even rephrase it, but offer a way to look at it. And it actually may be harder, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. Do you have a mission statement for your life? Because I think it's easier to be at least more methodical about finding your priorities if you have that mission statement. Because the mission statement is going to embody, what is it that I'm trying to do on this planet? It's management by objectives. If you don't know what your objectives are, it's going to be hard to find out. How do you prioritize something, because your objectives are floating all over the place? Now, that said, finding that mission statement isn't exactly easy, but even the effort of looking for the mission statement, I have found useful in terms of deciding what I'm going to do with my life. For example, when I decided I'm going to prioritize people over projects, there have been many times when I'm on my way and even have deadlines to do something, and somebody will call me up and they're just feeling bad, somebody in their life dies and they feel a big hole. I'm practicing, not good at it as I should be, but I'm practicing letting go of the project to say, this is here and now. This person needs me here and now. I try not to inconvenience others. Like if I tell you I'm going to meet you at 6 o'clock, it's now 5:55 and somebody says, hey, my dad died, like I need to talk to somebody. I will try to set a time that works for them, maybe give them something to think about so that we can have a more fruitful meeting. But I don't feel it's fair to inconvenience the other person based on my prioritizing this person's personal thing. But that all comes out in terms of like working out that mission statement, So I want to ask one, has anyone here even been aware that you have something, a mission statement, maybe you call it something else, but anybody has like a mission statement, a sort of a guiding principle on what the point of your life is? Anybody? Go ahead, Misty.
I do.
Mm.
But in taking into consideration the things you've said, it's got me thinking about how do I make that more specific. and how I feel like it's a little bit general. And what does that look like? I almost feel like I need to go back and revamp in my mind how it's written in my mind. But I did keep it short, one sentence. But I feel like, yeah, what does that look like when someone comes to you? And ironically, my dad did die this past year very suddenly, and you don't know what you don't know until you go through something like that. Now, when someone tells me this, I will drop everything and I will be there. That's been an eye opener. And I think our life's experiences are part of that. I go back to that. Our experiences are great teachers, and being there for people in their time of need. But I really try to be love each day. That's the word love, and trying to figure out what that looks like. But sometimes you get into the whole messy area of boundaries. You can get someone that will talk and talk, like you said, the 5-hour individual, and we're not getting anywhere, and they're not benefiting from it either. So what does that look like? And I think it gets down to that issue of quantity versus quality, and kind of what you all were talking about. What does that look like? And so this is some deep, I really didn't expect it to go this deep, but this is deep.
That's what we do
Which
here.
is good.
Yeah, we
It's
do
going
deep.
within. And every morning we're really supposed to, I think what I'm hearing too, and like what Diane was sharing too, it's like taking that time. I think we get so busy. So the fact that we're all here taking time to reflect and really get to know ourselves, and what's important is what's going to give us the outcome of our lives at the end of our lives, to say, I live my life well. Maya Angelou, how she would say, people always remember how you made them feel. And so I do try to remember that, how you make people feel. But yeah, sometimes we don't know we hurt people. So yeah, there's a lot of different directions. This could be a whole series.
I mean, it isn't. Well, you're exactly right. Like there are many different things that come up once you start to scratch and sniff. You realize, oh, there's a lot under the hood of this thing. But I think that it's important to just to organize our lives and have those priorities, is to be thinking of, okay, am I forwarding my mission? And especially if you think in terms of your life, that look, at the end of your life could be the next second. You know what I mean? So if you're living your life like it could be the next second, with the possibility that it could go on for an hour or more, then you have like a modus operandi, or the way you just operate, because it's like you're in idle, so you're not really pushing pedal to the metal, but everything you're doing starts to synchronize with that mission statement. So the priorities actually is the mission statement, is maybe what I'm getting at here. So your priorities is anything that furthers my mission, and it may be temporary, it may be immediate, like somebody that's right in front of me. As that African proverb goes, in the savannah, cut the grass in front of your face. If you're lost, you don't know which way direction, but there's grass in front of you. Keep cutting, and something, something will happen, but we don't really know. But if I decide, for example, compassion is part of my mission, and being connected compassionately is part of my mission as a human being here, then I set up my life so that I'm looking for opportunities to practice compassion. And, if I find that's not working, then I'll change the mission statement, but so far that worked for me, So some people, it might be, I want to have every model of Chevrolets that have ever been put out at the end of my life, And so, like, if they're doing compassion work, that may or may not further their goals, So I would get back to brainstorming those mission statements, And so I would like to throw out, does anyone else see another way? That's my way, or one of my ways to determine priorities. Does someone else have another idea of how you might go about having a game plan for establishing your priorities?
There's something a lot of us or a lot of people do every year that's part of this, and it's a little hackneyed, but one of the I mean, part of it is actually really good, and that's like taking assessment over a period of time. So the thing that's kind of hackneyed is the annual, like, New Year's resolutions. But the good thing about that really is the, looking back on the past year and saying, what do I want that I haven't done, So it's more of an altering of direction in some ways, a little. It may be a little specific to things, but at least, by looking back on the path you've taken, you can kind of see, maybe I want to alter this or push this way a little more, or push that way. So it doesn't get too broad, probably. It doesn't get into the greater sense of things exactly, but it does, that's one way to kind of, set your path forward, is by looking at where you've been and what you might want to change. I think, that kind of thing of constant self-assessment, some people, I mean, we all, I suppose people do it. Most people do it a lot. Some people do it a lot every day. I mean, it's one of those things. And so, but in the big sense, we lose sometimes the path we've taken because we are so caught up in the day. And, sometimes it just takes that kind of, it's kind of rote, it's kind of hackneyed, but looking back in the past year, at least gets you to think about more of a big picture a little bit. And then maybe, something I could do that I'm a little less satisfied there when I think back, and I should have spent more time here, or I should have done better here, or I'd really need to get more in that or learn more about this kind of thing. Those are opportunities anyway. So I think that's one way, without having a direct mission statement, that we're able to at least, kind of push us a little into recognizing our own values better.
Interesting. Krista, you were going to say something.
Oh, yeah.
Krista,
Hi.
Oh.
Good morning.
good morning.
So I was listening and I was doing my priorities too. I wanted to get on here. I try to get on every Thursday. I don't always do it, but know that it's a priority, kind of. But if I don't make time for it, then obviously it's not a big priority. But so I was thinking, so today I got on, but I also had to do some things with my son as far as helping organize his room, because my mom passed away too unexpectedly this year. She was 97. So right now we're getting ready for memorial. So that's kind of my priority. So I was cleaning and stacking all the tubs of everything we bought so far, and organizing it. And plus I'm carrying my phone around listening to the conversation. So I think death changes us. I've learned of death at a young age. So death changes us and how our priorities are. I mean, death has changed my life so much. As far as I used to be a drinker, and then my relatives, 6 of my relatives got killed by a drunk driver. So I stopped drinking and I started speaking out. After my mom passed, I'm learning a lot of things about her and about myself, being without a mother, and myself being a mom and being a grandma, trying to keep up with work, with community. I'm involved in a lot of community activities and trying to, I have a new granddaughter. She's like 4 months old, and I'm trying to, do my priorities. But sometimes life gets in the way of our priorities. As far as COVID, I want to see I was just thinking about that today. I took my son a bunch of clothes for my granddaughter, and I left him in his car. And a couple of people that I work with have COVID. So I don't want to go near my granddaughter right now That's her health is my priority. I love her, and I want to spend time. I want to cuddle her and kiss her up and everything, but I'm afraid, so my priority is to keep her safe and do what I can in the meantime by, helping with clothes or helping with groceries for my other grandkids or snacks, even though I can't be there right with them because of the fear. But, as far as just having priorities in everyday life and just being able to, I guess, just living in the present moment is kind of what I would say. I don't put a whole lot into New Year's Eve always makes me sad for many years. It's not like a new beginning for me. It's just like a sadness that year's ended. I don't really feel, I don't really put a lot of, I used to maybe 30, 40 years ago, but these times I really try not to do a whole lot of, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, because I don't really end up doing them anyway. So I guess living in the moment for me would be one thing is, just, and then practicing kindness, like some of the others have said, love, kindness, just being in the moment. And last night I was busy. I was working at community. I had 2 meetings and doing some other things till 10 at night. I didn't get home till 10:30, and I didn't see my son all day. So when I got home, he was in his room, I was in mine. So I called him up, and then I said, I'm home. So he came to see me in my room, and we talked for a few minutes, and I was exhausted. I said, I love you. I'm sorry. I just explained what I had to do. And he asked questions like, Mom, why are you doing this? Why in the community stuff? And I explained why it's important to me, so he's getting an understanding of the work that I do from watching and seeing me, and doing things that I do. So at least they're positive things, and they're not like out partying and drinking and drugging and all that. So I find that to be a good, it's not always positive, but it's a good priority for him and all my grandkids for later on in life, when they look back at us as we get older, the lessons that we can teach them. I guess those are my main priorities, is always leaving a good impression, for my ability, not for, we can't change people or their opinions of us. We could talk till we're blue in the face, but how they see us doing, maybe they'll catch on to, something, but we can't make them do it. We can just do what we do best. So I think that's how I was doing my priorities. It's not the best, but it works for me. So thank you.
That's what counts. That's
Yeah.
really what counts. Thank you, Crystal.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Mister, you were going to say something else too. Or did I lose you? No,
Oh,
okay.
and now I'm trying to think, what was I going to say? I got caught up in what Crystal was saying, and I'm getting better about that, not focusing on just my thoughts, really listening to what other people say. And then I'm like, oh yeah, what was I going to say?
Exactly.
I don't remember now.
Okay.
I'm sure it'll come to me. I apologize. Yeah, but
That's okay. Well,
I know what I was going to say. It's like that whole thing about accountability. Like, I think what's hard too with all of this is, as much as we want to show that compassion, or in my case, I say that, be that love and connecting people. What does that look like in the world where we have expectations from whatever that looks like for you, a board or commissioners and, whoever else you're supposed to make sure you're accountable for X, Y, Z. And so if I spent all day, I guess it always boils down to that time, and what that looks like. And like you had said, that's so true. You walk out of the door, and if someone comes to you and then at that point you have to prioritize, okay, this person's dad died, but if somebody's coming to you on this other item and you're like, well, that can wait. I mean, again, that you're prioritizing. Okay, this is up here, this is down here, but yet they're feeling maybe a broken fingernail is the worst thing this person's went through. That's their pain, and their pain feels like this. I mean, that's a really extreme example, but I don't know if that makes sense what I'm trying to say.
But a very real example that happens often, at least to me.
Yeah, I mean, to them, what just happened to them is the end of the world.
Yep.
And so, but yet, so figuring out how to address that, and I think you learn to find to do that. Just people skills goes a long way.
Well, then you see, that gets back to the having that mission statement. And it's not like a person has to be imprisoned by their mission statement, but it's a kind of like a framework in which one can think about, well, what's important to me, because it forces you to think about and prioritize in a big scale. What are the things that are important to me? What am I trying to do? Because that's harder to do on the fly, but as you practice coming back to your mission statement often, then what will happen is you can make decisions, many of which will not work out as you would have liked, but it's easier to trace back where, oh, that didn't work as well as I thought. Then you can make some course corrections. But if you're reinventing the wheel in every decision you make and every prioritization that you do, you can lose track of why you made that decision. You end up feeling guilt about something, or maybe more proud about it than deserved because the thing just happened to work out that way. But when you even if you do something that the results ends up being untoward, when you can say, well, that was part of my mission statement and it ran into conflict with life, you're not going to bat 1,000. It's just not going to happen. So if you have a framework in which you can, at least that's the way I roll. It's like, okay, some of you know that I do work in the prison. I'm a volunteer at the prison. And one of the things I say to the guys there from time to time is, at some point, I will disappoint you. At some point, I will hurt you. It will be because I wake up in the morning and think of, how can I screw these guys over? It would just be because that's how life rolls. There will be times when I'll wake up in the morning and I'll be on my way here, but I realize that in my state of mind, I should not go into the prison today. So I will change my plans. I will not go. I'll just say, okay, I'm not ready to go. I don't have the headspace to deal with the emotional needs that people have in the prison on that day. So I should not go, so I don't go. But without that kind of reflection on, well, what is the point of all of this? I don't think I could do that easy. I wouldn't even be aware of it. I think we have some more comments in the chat. If you could help us out with that, Karen.
Yeah. Let me see. Well, Diane said that it's interesting to her that the majority of participants today are women. No intention to offend, just an observation that she made. And then she said, I care about people, even the annoying ones. I pay attention to them and the situations that cause problems for them. If my help is requested, I will assist. Although I can help in many ways, my assistance is not always wanted. So I have learned to step back and simply pay attention. This has lessened the burdens that I tend to carry, and I try to be grateful that I do not have to get involved in every situation presented to me. And I was just going to add from my own thoughts, like kind of like what Crystal and a mix of what Misty and kind of everybody's been saying, but like the last couple of years, I think the way I prioritize things has changed just because of some sudden deaths that we've had in our family and just COVID and the storms and just everything. But I guess my motto kind of the last few years is that I want to live and prioritize what's happening in my life with the idea that I don't ever want to regret anything. So if I lose somebody, I don't want to ever live with regret that I wasn't there for them or that they didn't know how I felt. And no matter what the situation is, I just don't want to live with any sort of regret. I've seen a lot of people as of lately that are struggling with regret, and I don't want that for my life. But I do think I've gotten to the point where also I prioritize myself on a daily basis, and sometimes right down to a situational, like my priority right now is this brainstorming thing. But if somebody walked in a panic and something was happening, my priority might quickly focus to that. And so I think it's this every day I get up and say, what do I need to do today? What's happening? But if something comes up, my priorities will tend to focus depending on, am I going to regret this or not regret this? But I think in the last couple of years, my mission statement, as you say, has really just been like, just to live that I won't regret, so.
One of the things that I've observed, spinning off of Carolyn's comments, one of the things that I've observed is that we multitask because we can't make a decision over which things take priority. And we know from let's say experimentation that the brain is incapable of multitasking because it can only entertain one thought at a time. That's just how it's built. It can flip-flop back and forth, giving us that sort of movie version of we're being dynamic in thought, but in actual fact, we're just taking snapshots, So with that in mind, it might be useful to be, undergoing this prioritization query to ourselves. It's a self query, not that we necessarily need to answer to anyone else but ourselves. But it's a way to help deal with that need to like multitask. Which is more important for me to do, to listen to my kid or read, listen to my kids' story about what they did today, or to, fix the carburetor. Do they still have carburetors? So I think that's just an example of, like, in life, we're always trying to make it's one of those multitasking things. We, trying to figure out which thing is more important to me. Some things are more important in long term, but you can't get to the long term until you get to the short term, unless you deal with the short term. And so it's, as I think it's clear by this time, this is not easy stuff. It's not easy to do, but it's important work. Well, we have about 2 or 3 more minutes. Anything other, that someone feels they can add to this conversation before we wrap it up for today? Anybody?
I'll just add one more thing, that I think what Misty said about how to figure out how to prioritize what other people feel too is really difficult. And if somebody could let me know how to do that. And just like an example of, just this past weekend, I had to make a decision. I care for my 96-year-old grandmother, and every Sunday I go to her house and I do her laundry and I prepare her meals and her pills and everything for the week. And to me, that is a huge priority. In my mind, I don't know how many Sundays I have left with her. And last weekend, my cousin wanted me to go camping with her and do some other things. And I said, oh, but I really need to go to grandma's. And she said, it's just one Sunday. And to me, it's like, it is just one Sunday, but I don't know how many Sundays I have left with my 96-year-old grandmother. But to this particular cousin whose son was taken from her, at 17 years old, she doesn't know how many Sundays any of us have left, period. And it's just a different thought process. And that can be very hard to navigate to when you're trying to prioritize. So
Right.
It like Misty had a good point there, that this could be the most terrible thing that's ever happened to this person. But so there's always that difficult point in there to try to, and that's why I say sometimes I just take it like situation by situation, not even day by day or year by year, just situation, and try to remember what those other people are. It's hard. People are complex. It's difficult.
I've noticed that about myself. I don't recognize myself sometimes. It's like, and from the inner and the outer. And I think if we're growing and we're trying to make the best of whatever this life is, that's part of the deal. We don't have it figured out. There's a good chance we won't ever have it figured out. but we're in the mix, and that's what's important, is to keep brainstorming these ideas, and something will happen. You'll meet people, you'll have other conversations, and you take these conversations with you and brainstorm them with other people. It should not stop here. It should be just make it part of your modus operandi. It's just how you roll. Okay. Well, we've come to the end of our road. That could be a rock song. We'll see you next week, same time, same station. And we're doing is it the Library for the Blind next week, Carolyn? We will have a very interesting discussion that you will definitely want to be engaged in. So until next week, thanks and see you later.